Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds, England, and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with a bereavement to write and record their own original song. We believe in celebrating lives and making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk, or you can also find us on all the social media channels. The podcast features songwriters. Every episode, I have a different songwriter on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We have a chat about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them for a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Justin Sullivan. Justin is a founding member and lead singer for the band New Model Army, who have been going for over 40 years now, started in 1980, and they've written a load of amazing songs and a load of different approaches and crossing different genres, and just a very interesting band. So it was a real pleasure to spend a bit of time with Justin talking more about his craft, and he talks about a song from the new album, which is just coming out this week. So yeah, there's lots of, and then we also talk about one of his older songs as well, which is specifically about bereavement. It's a really interesting conversation, and I think you're going to enjoy it. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We're really trying to build it a bit this year, so we really appreciate your support if you find this conversation interesting. But yeah, without further ado, here's Justin Sullivan from New Model Army on the Swan Song Project podcast. Enjoy. Okay, today I'm here with Justin Sullivan. Thanks for joining me, Justin.
Hiya.
Thanks for coming on the show. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
That looks really weird when I put up that. It said I've got a really big hand.
Yeah.
Face. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone new to the show, this is the Swan Song podcast. Each week I have a different songwriter on. And first we're going to talk about one of Justin's songs. Then I'm going to ask Justin for a songwriting tip. And then at the end we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Justin in some way relating to bereavement. So over to you, Justin. Which song of yours have you chosen to talk to us about first today?
Well, you have chosen a song called I Did Nothing Wrong, which is from an album that comes out in about 8 days or something. Finally.
Brilliant. So yeah, this is I Did Nothing Wrong by New Model Army.
I did nothing wrong, I did nothing wrong. I was always straight and honest, as the days were always long. I loved the job, I loved to help the people. I did nothing wrong, they found me in the morning, asleep in a sea of paper, coffee stains and bits of paper, failed sums and bits of paper, and nothing still resolved. Tick the boxes only ones and zeros, only tick the boxes, winners and losers only right and wrong, innocent or guilty only. I stare at numbers and stare at the screen, I stare at numbers and stare at the walls closing in. And now I stare at numbers and stare at the screen, I stare at numbers and stare at the walls closing in. Machines do not lie, machines cannot lie. The company men are I, business suits and poker faces. I offered what I could, but I am under suspicion. Must be somebody knows what's going on, somebody isn't saying the strategies of money multiply with others paying, and everything decided higher up the chain. I stare at numbers and stare at the screen, I stare at numbers and stare at the walls closing in. And now I stare at numbers and stare at the screen, I stare at numbers and stare at the walls closing in. The circuits, the logic, it follows, it follows, it follows. If you like that, you're gonna love this. If you bought that, sound of prison metal, the sound of closing gates, and worst of all, the sound of footsteps receding.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, that was I Did Nothing Wrong. Yeah, it's a really powerful song, Justin. What can you tell us about it? What can you tell us about writing it?
So I'll talk a little bit in general about songwriting because it's going to cross the other things we're talking about. The way we tend to write with New Model Army is that we've got two cupboards. One is marked musical ideas, and into that goes, you know, some chords, a bit of melody, a bit of a jam we do one day, some bass lines, and especially drum beats. And you know, Michael comes up with loads of really interesting beats. And then the other cupboard goes. I'm a writer, so I've always got a notebook, and sometimes I'm writing down, you know, a little phrase or that I think of, or someone tells me a story, or I read a story, which is how we'll come on to I Did Nothing Wrong. Or it's a rant, or it's just an observation or something. That's in the notebooks. That's the stuff I want to write about. And then making an album is it's a bit like doing a jigsaw for us. You go, right now we're going to make an album, and you wait till the cupboards are full, but actually they're always full. So I was start with that drum beat. That kind of goes with those chords. And what does that feel like? That feels a bit like this lyrical idea. And then you sort of put it together, and then it's the first thing you do is always rubbish, so throw it away. But you're never staring at a blank piece of paper because there's all these more ideas. So I Did Nothing Wrong. I think it was a beat, the musical roots. It's a beat of Michael's, which Kerry put this bass line to. I had some chords lying around which kind of sat in there. So that's the kind of starting point. Now, the post office scandal, I mean, the extraordinary thing about the post office scandal is that it's now headline news. And it's headline news because of this drama series on ITV. But it was sort of slightly headline news 3 years ago. I started reading about it during lockdown, I think. And the first court case was more than 2 years ago now, when it was proved that these people were innocent, that it was faulty software, that, you know, and yet the idea of just wiping out all the convictions, paying them some serious compensation because for the things these people went through, it's been dragging on for years. It's like, I don't understand it. First of all, it was a sort of tale of monstrous corporate arrogance and kind of dishonesty, and then later on, even when that's been proved, it's like this dragging their heels about doing proper redress, proper justice. It made me crazy. I wrote a load of, like it's made everybody crazy. So when I was first reading about it in 2020, I think, I wrote a load of stuff in my notebooks. And then when we were putting, sitting there starting writing the album 2021, found this bass drums idea, some chords of mine. I want to write a song about the post office thing. So I started with that story as a kind of basic idea, and then extended it into some thoughts about the way the world is becoming. We're altering our society to suit computers. And computers are basically stupid because the computer can only do 1 or 0. And now more and more in our society, pick your side. Is it a 1 or a 0? Is it right or is it wrong? It can't be in between. It can't, human beings, and we naturally can think of hold two diametrically opposed ideas in our heads. We have emotions which are always conflicted. We have make different judgments according to context and nuance and things. It's complex. We are complex creatures. Our brains are very complex. Computers are basically stupid, and we're sort of building a society which everything is a 1 or a 0. Pick a side, and all this sort of thing. So, and then I got onto the principle of algorithms. If you like this, you're going to love that. It's an interesting idea that how algorithms work. That the computer starts off by making some observations about, if you're listening to Spotify and you've listened to a song, and you think you're going to listen to another one. So, the person who likes New Model Army also likes this. So this goes into an algorithm, and it's a number of people. So this then tells you where to go. So it strengthens the algorithm. Do you know what I mean? So, so if you're listening to New Model Army, it says, oh, you like this, you might like this. So you'll click on it. And even if you click off after the first 10 seconds because you don't like it, the algorithm will tell you you've clicked from there to there, therefore that's what you like. And it sort of leads you. It's like it's a terrible tyranny. And there's another song on the album called Language, which is about how the language we use affects the way we act and affects society and affects decisions that are made. And if, the things that, what's the internet for? Cats, porn, and anger. Things that are thoughts that are, again, nuanced, they got context, they're thoughts about kindness. Not that many people are going to click on them. So they're not going to rise to the top of Google. What rises to the top of Google is anything that's outrageous and that makes you angry. Click. So this then gets risen to the top. So you would, if you live on the internet, and increasingly we all do, you would think now that the world is 100% an angry, violent, brutal, dangerous place. Actually, it's not. Actually, if you walk out there and talk to people on the street, most people are quite okay. People like to get on with other people. Mostly they're okay. But again, the digital world doesn't reflect that. So it went on to a wider thoughts about, the way computers work, really.
Yeah.
I was writing that and putting it together using ideas from Michael and Kerry's starting point, and then at the end, I think it was Kerry that wanted it to go on, and so we went on. We thought it needs a guitar solo at the end. Dean play guitar solo. It's a really good guitar solo. That is a furious, and yet still quite musical, but furious guitar solo. I think it's really good. So
that's great. Yeah, thank you, Justin. And just for any listeners, maybe any international listeners who might not be aware about the post office scandal, it's like a huge story here in England at the minute. So, and if you're not familiar with it, I definitely recommend reading more about it. But yeah, it's just
It's a
a kind of
very modern story, but maybe it's particularly British. This kind of closed, absolutely closed doors of the upper echelons of the corporate structures that we all live under.
yeah. And as you alluded to, it is a very much a kind of, well, the computer says this, so it doesn't matter what the humans say because the computer's saying this, and not speaking to people as humans, but trusting that a machine's not making a mistake. And there's the line in it, isn't there, of machines can't lie, in the song, which which is very kind of resonant with this story. So yeah, I'd recommend anyone who's not familiar with it to read up more about it. And I watched the ITV drama, which was very good. It's very kind of like coincidence. Yeah, like it's like a funny coincidence as well. So obviously, like you've written this song, you say a couple of years ago, and
yeah,
then
we weren't gonna rush it out, and then it wasn't actually ever going to be a single. It was going to come out as an album track, and then this was all front pages, and the album's going to come out in like 2-3 weeks. So we thought I would put it out now.
Yeah, very like fortuitous and like it's just like this, and again, it seems weird because you say as the story's been going on for a long time, this post office stuff, but then this drama's just really brought it up to everyone's attention, and it's huge news. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much it helps your record sales as well with this. This album.
I don't know. We never sort of worry. We're in a very enviable position in Model Army. We've got to a point where we never really cared much about money, and we never really cared about how successful we are, as long as there was enough money to make the next record. Last time I looked, there was food in my fridge, so we just go on. We're not really in the business of trying to get big or be successful. There is when you're a young musician, I remember we used to talk about making it when we make it. And what we meant by that is what all young musicians mean, which is to make a living from it. And we were lucky enough to cross that line in 1984. We make a living from it. And very privileged, very blessed, very lucky. And after that, it doesn't really matter. Levels of success, who cares?
Yeah, and you seem to have a very kind of good space of, very what's the word, like in control of your sound, and you seem to produce music. You just produce music you want to make.
Just do rather than we just do what we like.
Being dictated,
we're not trying to please anyone, an audience or a record company or a music industry, or our own audience. We're not trying to please anybody. We're trying to please ourselves. I think somebody said, what's the difference between now and 43 years ago when the band started? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, 43 years ago, you get in a room with some other people and you make a noise that you love. It's yours. You've created it. This noise you do together. And you're proud of it and you love it. And 43 years later, it's basically the same.
Yeah, that's a great space to be. Back to the writing of the song then. So I like your description of having the two cupboards. How big are those cupboards? Like how many ideas are in each of them? Is it
unlimited?
Vast, unlimited.
Vast and unlimited. There is all these ideas, but actually what happens when you start writing an album, you stop using the cupboards as much because one idea leads to another, and you start creating more ideas. Fresh ideas start coming because you're in the process of it. But start having a starting point of having lots of ideas as starting points. I think that's important. It means, like I say, you're never staring at a blank piece of paper going, what we do.
Yeah. And so are you constantly writing yourself? So you mentioned you're always writing lyrics.
Writing, I'm always pissing around on guitar, and the other guy, and it's not, people think it's my band. It's not my band. We're a band. and everybody else is always pissing around on stuff musically. And like I say, we pool all these ideas. I'm the person that writes the words, and turning the ideas into songs is mostly me, but involves other people. I get stuck and other people help me out, or they go, you know, that thing you've written there, Justin, I don't like that. It doesn't work for me because, and I go, okay, I'll change it. You know, I have a lot of ideas, but they're not all good ones. So I rely on other people to help me out, and then they have ideas, and I really like that idea, or I don't like that one so much, and we argue and we fight like a band about, you know, about the music. But mostly we're trying to make, I think we agree about the feelings that we're trying to create, and the vibe that we're trying to create. How to get there is an inexact science. I've never really believed in democracy in bands, though. We hardly ever take a vote on something.
Yeah.
It's much more that the person that feels the strongest persuades the others. It's like a consensus thing.
Yeah.
You know, and people imagine that, you know, that must be me that's persuading them, but actually it's not always me. In fact, it's not even mostly me.
Yeah. And so yous are all pooling that, and is that separately? So like, are yous all like sending each other
Some of it's
ideas?
separate. Yeah, some of it's separate. I mean, there's, you know, Michael will record loads of drum beats and they're sitting there, and I occasionally write a song with an acoustic guitar, you know, or a piano or something, just on my own in the traditional way. I have done that. I still do that, but mostly I like to start with rhythm. And you know, the drum beats sitting there on this album quite a lot. Kerry took Michael drum beats and you know, wrote bass to them, and then I took the bass and drums. Sometimes it comes from a jam session. We're all together, we're messing around in a sound check. We think, oh, that's an interesting idea. And we used to carry dictaphones around, but now everybody's got a mobile phone, so there's a voice recorder. So you just record a bit of that, and later on you go back to it and go, oh, that's an interesting groove. We can do something with that. So sometimes it's collective, sometimes it's individual.
Okay, so it varies quite a lot. And then so you've got and then you're just writing lyrics based on whatever mood takes you. Like, so with this one, for example, you were kind of inspired by the story, and then you'd write a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've got, like I say, the notebooks again are a starting point. Writing stuff in notebooks, you know, is just like breathing for me. Turning the kind of raw ideas into a song, that's just hard work.
Okay.
I like doing it. I like it when it's done. It's because you've got to get an idea into 4 lines, and you might want it to rhyme, maybe not. Sometimes I want it to rhyme, sometimes it doesn't seem important. But you've got to be able to sing it, and it's got to fit into a structure. And sometimes you've got something very long, you've got to pare it right down. And then often I sort of get a chorus. Once you've got a chorus, then you can go off on different tangents in the verses. Sometimes I do that as well.
Yeah. So when you're writing in the notebooks, most of the time that's not really lyrics as such. That's just writing.
Yeah.
And then
occasionally it's like a rhyming couplet of something. I think that's cool. First Summer After, Last Summer Before. It's a kind of feeling I had that summer of 22 when I was driving around Eastern Europe with my girlfriend, and I had this thing ringing in my head. This the first summer after COVID, and the last summer before all the rest of the shit that's coming. And you know, that phrase, and I thought, yeah, that's a musical phrase. That song was kind of easy to write in the sense that once you've got that phrase, I just told that it was the road trip, and I just told the story of the road trip, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that these different stages of like just like the kind of raw content and raw like ideas, and then the structuring side of it, and
then it's work, half of which is quite fun because you're kind of feeling your way forward, and sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes you just sit there with a pen. You've got a rough idea, but making it work. And then there's things about choosing the words sometimes, because some words are musical and some aren't, or some phrases are musical and some aren't. And I always used to choose the words I meant exactly in English, but actually sometimes these days I choose the words that nice to sing.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of compromise there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a tricky one, isn't it? And does that stage happen after you've decided on one of the musical ideas? Or would you tend
Yeah,
to
it's kind of simultaneous, but
kind of
music, often the music comes first. In fact, with us, and I think perhaps we're unusual in this sense that often the first thing is the drum beat.
mm,
You know, we start with the drums. There was one album we did, which is called Between Dog and Wolf, which is, myself and Michael decided, you know, we'd experimented with layering drums, but we wanted to build it up and have a kind of drum orchestra, the sort of thing you can only really do in a studio. And we went to London, and to quite a nice studio, and we recorded a week of drums before most of the songs were written. Then we came back and wrote the songs to the drums.
wow. And is that mostly just like jamming, or is there any kind of strategy of direction? Like we're going to write some drums out of this kind of style and this kind of style,
I mean, Michael's a very creative drummer, so he'll come up with all sorts of beats. There are lots of different rhythms in the world. I mean, there's a duduka, which is most rock music, but mostly we don't do that. We do it occasionally, but mostly he's got really interesting beats. A new album in particular, but actually generally Michael's a really creative drummer. He always puts the snare in the wrong place in a beat. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a second track on the album is, you know, the kick is in the offbeat. It's really weird, but brilliant, and it gives it a kind of dynamic flow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting way of working. So yeah, and go back to the
for people you're going to be talking about on your website that maybe want to write a song, you know, and they're perhaps not experienced songwriters, and they're certainly not in a band, then it's a kind of bit of a different process. So I also did a solo album a couple of years ago during lockdown, like everybody did. I was sat on the sofa and there was nothing to do, and I had a guitar and a notebook full of ideas, and I just sat and wrote loads of songs on acoustic guitar. So I can do that too. And that's perhaps a bit more of what you're talking about. If I've got a piece of advice about songwriting, I think Leonard Bernstein said this, that before music exists, it has to be imagined. And I certainly believe in that you might start with some chords and a bit of melody and a couple of words, you know, by sitting with a guitar. But then it's really good to get up from that. You've got that in your head, put the guitar down, go for a walk, have it going around in your head and see where it leads you, and imagine it in your head, hear it in your head before you know, rather than looking for the sitting there with a guitar or piano or something, looking for the next chord, hear it in your head, imagine it first. And I think that's quite important, that you have to, if you imagine it first, then find it on the guitar or the piano or whatever you use to write with.
Yeah, that sounds like a good piece of advice. And I do like I really like the idea of the starting rhythm first. And I think, as you say, for like some of the people who might be just starting out at songwriting, if you've not got a band or you've not got a drummer, you might find that a bit harder. But you could find like drum tracks on YouTube to start as like a prompt. Can you? One of the things I've said to people before is just start tapping, just so you just get yourself a little rhythm, and then you know, start singing up. Because I think people might be, you know, people who aren't don't do a lot of music might, you know, be daunted by notes at first, but everyone can tap, and everyone can get into a bit of a rhythm, and then just start seeing if anything comes to that. And build from there. So it's like a simplified version of
words, and then think of a melody for the words that suits the way the words flow. And you think of a melody, you find yourself singing it, and then find the chords after, perhaps. I mean, the vocal melody is the most important thing, really.
Yeah, really interesting. Lots of different approaches, isn't there? I wanted to ask you about, so you talked a little bit about the different rhyme schemes and stuff, because the I Did Nothing Wrong's got quite an unusual rhyme scheme, hasn't it? For some of the verses have the it's like first two lines rhyme and then the third one doesn't rhyme. So I don't know which way you class the whole verse, but so there's like the I did nothing wrong, I did nothing wrong. I was always straight and honest as the days were long. I love the job, I love to help the people.
Yeah. Third line sits on its own separate.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I mean, I'm sure it's not totally original. I mean, there's nothing totally original in that sense.
No.
People have written songs in a million different ways. It's like if you can write a song with 15 chords, or you can write a song with 2. You know, there's no rules about what you have to do.
Yeah, so it's one of those things it stood out to me, and so yeah, I was interested to see if it was a conscious decision or if it just kind of came out that way. But one of the things that I think is a good effect of it, I think it really makes those lines stand out, and really sit with you, because it kind of just like, there's the line rather than it's fitting the pattern. And I guess as we talked about earlier, it's not compromising on those lines to fit a rhyme scheme. It's like, here's just the line that I want to say.
Yeah, I don't really think about it too much.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, great stuff. Let's move into section 2 now, shall we? So this is where I asked my guests for a songwriting tip. So we just had some really good songwriting advice there. Was that the tip you were going to share with us, Justin, or was doing another?
Yeah, imagine it. Listen to it in your head before you obviously starting with a pen and a paper and a couple of chords, but or a bit of melody. But then when you don't know where the song should go, where's it going to go next? Imagine it. Listen in your head. Your head will lead you to where it should go. You'll find yourself singing it, and the voice, I want to go up there. You know, if you imagine it, if you sat with a guitar, it's a bit, or a piano, it's a bit limiting in a way. I think it's good to walk away from it. Walking is very good for this, but or just get up and walk around the room, you know.
Yeah.
And the other one that's really good is bus journeys or train journeys, or being a passenger in a car, or even when you're driving, if you're not worried about driving. I mean, I'm not, but some people like to concentrate on the road. I don't really bother. It depends on the amount of traffic, I suppose. But if you have a moving backdrop, that tends to free up the mind to move. If you're staring at walls, you can get a bit stuck. And I've often think of ideas on train journeys, bus journeys, car journey. When there's a moving backdrop, or walking, when what you're seeing is changing all the time, that tends to free up the mind, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's constant, like, varied stimulation to help feed into whatever it is you're working on. So is that part of your practice regularly? Would you have regular breaks to go and?
It just happens. I don't walk as much as I should. I do drive all the time. As I said, my partner lives in France, so I have an awful lot of long journeys to France and back, and that's time to think and drift and because the landscape's moving, it does free up the mind to drift a little bit, as long as the road's not too full.
Yeah. Doing the dishes is one that I used to always get as well. Like, I could sit working for ages or something. I'd just be hitting a brick wall. Then I'd go and do the dishes and be like, "That's the thing." There.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not really exactly a moving backdrop, but in a way, it's doing something which is kind of mechanical that you don't have to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not stood there going, sat on there looking at 4 walls and thinking, "What should I do?" That's really deadly.
Yeah.
If that happens, I don't really believe in writer's block. I think you just work through it, but all the exercises to free up your mind. And if something is not working, if you're trying to write a song and it's just not working for you, walk away from it, leave it for a week, leave it for, we've left things for 2 years. We didn't really know what to do with that. It's a great idea, but never came right. Shelve it, come back to it 2 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. Do you have a clear sense of like how much to work on something and when to shelf it? So there's that bit there. Like if you were working on something and like, is there any particular thing where that tells you like this just isn't working, let's shelve it, or this might just need a little bit longer?
It's when everybody else around me goes, Justin, it's fucking finished. I can't finish anything. I can just tweak it and tweak it and tweak it, and sometimes it gets better and better and better. But actually, sometimes it gets worse and worse the more you tweak it. And again, I rely on people around me to go, it's finished. And we would never finish an album. Fortunately, we're given deadlines, and we always extend them a bit. But having a deadline is good.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good. I think the option of being able to just constantly nitpick is very tempting to people, isn't it? And like you can just constantly change it, and it's not necessarily always going to make it better.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi everyone, I'm Kath O'Neill, and back in May this year I was diagnosed with grade 4 stomach cancer. I'd heard of the Swan Song Project on the Chris Evans radio show, so I contacted Ben about writing a song to inspire my 10-year-old grandson Rufus to improve his confidence. Working on the song gave me a distraction from my cancer, which was what I really needed. The process didn't take long, about half a dozen sessions online with Ben. He put the song together with some music friends that he has, including Boff Whaley from Chumbawamba. The process was absolutely brilliant. I got so much fun from it. My family loved the song, including Rufus. Thanks for the memory, Ben. I'll never forget it.
To help more people like Kath write their swan songs, please donate to the Swan Song Project today. So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests for a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And Justin kindly sent me lots of options. You've written quite a lot of bereavement songs, which is I guess sad in some ways that you've had a lot of bereavement that you've processed through songwriting. But yeah, there was lots of songs to choose from. And yeah, I normally ask my guests which song they chose, but as Justin pointed out earlier, I chose this one because he gave me lots of options, and I chose this one to go with. So which song about bereavement are we going to talk about?
Well, I think you've chosen it. Ghosts. The starting point of the song, well, it was a musical starting point with a layer of drums and then this kind of bass line, which is kind of played on a cello, actually. It's got a kind of I found it strange that in my life, people close to me have died. My parents, and two people that I work closely with, Robert Heaton, who was the drummer and my main partner as a songwriter for many years in New Model Army, and also Tommy T, who was our tour manager in the 80s and then became our manager in the 90s and was our manager up to 2008 when he very suddenly, unexpectedly died. They were both in their 40s when they died. And it's just strange that my reaction afterwards was quite different. I felt Tommy had kind of moved on, perhaps because his life was cut very short, but he did make some kind of completed journey from being a young wild man into being a responsible father and grown-up man, and a manager of us. And it was a kind of journey, and something about him, he was always somehow ready to go. He was a kind of ready to go person. And after he died, at the time very shocked and very sort of, that whole bereavement thing that everybody's experienced. But I felt that he'd gone. Robert, on the other hand, was a much more troubled soul. I had a very difficult relationship with him. We wrote a lot of very good songs together, but it wasn't always easy between us. We were very polar opposites, and he had a much more troubled life, perhaps. And when he died, I don't know. This is my own version, which probably is completely different from somebody else's version who knew him. That I felt he was still around all the time for ages. Perhaps a little bit less now. He died in 2004, but for a very long time, I felt his ghost around the place. So I wrote a song about that and the idea of ghosts. That you have I've never seen a ghost. This idea of the apparition. But the presence of someone, I felt it particularly strongly with Robert. And it's still sometimes, a bit less these days, but for many years after he died, I did feel it. And I think I tried to, the song was written 7 years after he died. I wrote a song when he died, which is a very different kind of song. And I wrote this song about 7 years later. And it was about his presence still being there, and the key line, the chorus is, the ghosts become part of us. And it is like all the people that you're close to in your life, when they pass on, but they leave a chunk of themselves in you, or in us. Do you know what I mean? It was that kind of idea.
Yeah. It's a really, I think it's a really interesting concept, isn't it? And I think it's a really kind of well expressed in the song. And I don't know, it's kind of funny, isn't it? The idea that ghosts are generally seen as being haunting, rather than. So I was going to ask you about the presence, whether what that kind of felt like. So because I kind of get completely the idea of feeling like someone's still with you.
Either with Robert, I mean, it's very personal. It depends on the person, doesn't it? It was neither benign nor threatening. It was just watching with a slightly raised eyebrow.
Yeah,
that's what it was, which was a bit him. He was a little bit. He was a person that could watch with a slightly raised eyebrow, which was something I loved about him, actually. And I think it was just to feel his presence in the studio watching. And it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't particularly benign, but neither was it threatening or negative at all either. It was just kind of there.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah. Let's have a listen to the song anyway. So this is Ghosts by New Model Army.
So did you lose your faith? Did you fall upon your sword? I know she took a piece of your heart, and I know I had a piece of your soul. And now you follow me into the room filled with echoes and mirrors, and the sound of something pounding as you hang there just watching. And when the music is gone, the silence is still ringing with all these conversations dead and the living. For the ghosts become part of us. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts are part of us. These ghosts become part of us. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts are part of us. There's some kind of reckoning when everything is done. For it seems the more that you give, well, the stronger you become. And there's so much more left for the giving. In all these conversations between the dead and the living, but the ghosts become part of us. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts become part of us. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts are part of us. Ghosts become a part of us. Ghosts are part of us. Ghosts are part of us.
Okay, brilliant. So that was Ghosts. Yeah, it's a really powerful song. I really like it. Did you find anything? What? So you say it was 7 years after he died that you wrote it?
Yeah. I did write the Fireworks Night song, which I sent you. I wrote the day after he died.
Day after. Oh, wow.
And there was a piece of music we had lying around, and I just went down to the studio and did it. And that was a very different kind of song. But
yeah. And so was that one? So you had a piece of music, and then just in response to the death, it was just did it feel like I need to write something, and you just knew you had that bit
I
and you
don't
just
know
went,
if there's a need. I mean, I don't. For me, music is not like sort of. It probably is a catharsis process, but I don't think of it as that. I don't think I need to write a song. Just if I'm lucky because basically writing a song is what I do for a living, so the writing a song is kind of a pretty natural process for me now. I think we've released like 250 songs, so it's just something you do. And I think I just wanted to maybe, I can't remember now exactly. It was 2004. I went down to the studio and as I said, Michael and myself had done this piece of music, and it was kind of just lying there without any words. Or maybe I'd started on words, but anyway, I thought I want to write about what I feel at this moment.
And do you remember what it was that then prompted you to write Ghosts all these years later?
No, I think it was that sense of Robert still being around somewhere sometimes.
Yeah. And was this one where the method that you talked about earlier, had you written quite a bit in your books about Robert and the Presence, and then decided, let's pull this
This I can't remember, actually. I don't remember if it was already in my books or whether it's something I just did there and then. It partly depends on, because songwriting for us partly depends on time. Hold on a second. Martin, can I call you back? Can I call you back? Cheers. If you're on the road, there's no time to write songs because you're always tired anyway, and then there's things to do and sound checks to do and gigs to do, and the rest of the time you're just very tired. You might think of an idea, but the kind of mental energy and focus required to write a song on the road, forget it. All your mental energy is in the gigs, and apart from that, you're just kind of a bit dead in your head. So if I have ideas at those moments, then I jot them down in the notebooks. But if we're hanging around Bradford or then I get an idea, then there is time to just write it there and then. And I can't remember in this particular case.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really good song. I really like the sense of kind of not put into the words in the right way, I would say, but that idea that all these people who've had an impact in your life, kind of live on through the impact they've had in you in a way. So I was telling you,
the more that you give, the stronger you become. That's the line. I can't remember the line before it, but this idea that if in your life you give a lot to people, actually it makes you stronger, because in them you exist through other people as well as yourself, and it makes you a stronger kind of presence or something. Robert gave a lot. He was a generous man, and especially artistically, he was very generous. Gave me a lot.
Yeah. And his presence still very much lives on, and very much you kind of felt, and it's one of the lovely things with bands, isn't it? Is that, like, obviously that's such a vehicle for people to live on through. Music can live forever, can't it? And
I mean, most famously, perhaps, there's a Nimrod Lamy song called Green and Grey. I'll tell you a little story. It's probably not relevant for the podcast at all. Robert was not only a great drummer, but he was also a guitar player, bass player. There are a handful of Nimrod Lamy songs where he wrote all the music, and he came to me with some music and said, write a lyric, write a melody, do the vocal. And I remember when we were writing Thunder and Consolation, we were working in this amazing studio down in Cornwall that he'd discovered. And we both turned up for these sessions with remember those little 4-track cassette multi-track? You could multi-track yourself onto a cassette, very primitive, but you could get ideas down there. And we both turned up with these lots of ideas. And one of the things, he turned up with this thing, music, and it was kind of complete. It had a structure for a song. It had a verse and a bridge and a chorus. It had great drum beat, great bass part, acoustic guitar, even a bit of keyboard. And he played it to me, and I went, I like it, but I don't know what to do with it. And I'm not sure if it's New Model Army. I'm not sure if it's us, Robert. It's a bit kind of esoteric, and it's kind of stadium rock a bit. I'm not sure. And he went, it's best thing I've ever written. Go and write some bloody lyrics. So I went back up to the accommodation place, and I went through my notebooks, and I cobbled this together quite fast, using the central story about someone moving from the north of England to London. Really, I mean, it's a common story. It applies all over the world. People moving from the country to the cities, and some more story ideas that I found stuff in my notebooks and put it together. It didn't take me very long, a couple of hours, and then I went back down to the studio and sang it. And Robert said, no, that's completely wrong for this music. That's not what I had in mind at all. And I said, well, I'm sorry, it's my best shot. I think it kind of works, but that's what I got from it, and that's my best shot at it, Robert. And we had a bit of an argument, and then we went, we'll shelve it and move on to something else and listen to it later. And the next day we went down to the studio and we went, let's listen to that thing that we did. So we put it on, and it got to the end, and we both looked at each other and went, really good. And that was Green and Grey, and and it has become one of our most loved and abiding songs.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes the immediate reaction, I don't know, it can't be trusted, can it? So, just what popped to my head when you were talking there about the story there, so we move from the country to the city, and how it's you could write a specific story about it, but it's a kind of a universal theme in a way. Is that something that you like strive towards a lot of? Because it's the other thing I thought with
I think that when you write songs, that they ought to be, they can be about big things, like you say, a big theme, the people move in country city, or something that's about, the big theme, like I Did Nothing Wrong is about computers, but they must have details. Because if you have the details and all, everybody says your songs are like a bloody weather forecast. My songs have often got the weather in them. And they've got little details and little bits of a story. You've got to have story, because then the song creates like a movie in the listener. You know what I mean? They start to imagine these scenarios. The story is having a song that has to have details and a bit of a story somewhere in a song. I don't really like lyrics which are about the inside of people's heads or just sloganeering. I think you've got to have a kind of narrative, and because human beings, we really respond to stories and details that we can see. The way you're writing a bereavement song, the way somebody made a cup of tea, those kind of details matter. Those are the important things almost, because then you start to feel the person. And I remember somebody said, I was on a I think it was a Californian punk rock webzine, and they said, what's the best lyric ever written? And I gave them the answer that I don't think they were expecting, and I said Jolene, because in Jolene you have 2.5 characters, 2 women and the man's a bit of a half character, doesn't really count, but 2 women, and you have this extraordinary story please don't take my man. And you have these two characters. They're really drawn. You even see them, the gold with the locks of auburn hair or whatever it is. You can see them. You've got all the pain of the situation, of the love and so on. Two women talking to each other. It's very, you can see it all, and it's all in 12 lines. That is how to write a song. You know, to tell what is really a whole movie, but it's in 12 lines. It's brilliant.
Incredible, isn't it? Because it's one of the things that I was thinking when I was listening to the I Did Nothing Wrong as well, that it's got that specificity, but it's but then I guess, because obviously, like you're pulling in the wider
I
problems
imagine
with technology and things.
At this point, I didn't know. I understood the story, and I knew there were quite a lot of Sub Pope masters, and I just imagined being one of them, working. Or they found me in the morning asleep in a sea of paper, coffee stains, and bits of paper, and failed sums, and all these people trying to work out where this fucking money has gone. The kind of desperation, it's the details of the coffee stains on the bits of paper. You create pictures in the song.
It feels very gritty, that it feels very realistic, and gives you that sense. But then it's also it's specific, but it's not too specific. I think there's a balance, isn't there, of like where it's specific in terms of you understanding the situation and connecting to it, but not too specific that you can't then apply it to something else. So I was thinking,
so it never mentions Post Office Horizon Jitsu. No, it can be applied to all sorts of things.
So if you didn't know about the post office scandal and you heard the song, you'd get a very sense of the feeling of it, but you wouldn't necessarily know, oh, this is about the post office scandal and Jiu-Jitsu.
That's right. That's right. I try not to be too specific, actually.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing where
it's the human emotions that matter.
And so many people have to connect to that feeling and emotion in the story, but if you
apply it to other things, I mean, it's like all the majority of songs in the history of the universe have been about relationships and love, and the difficulty of relationships and so on, because that is the thing that affects us the most. We get worked up about politics or that, this and that, but that's not the same thing as how emotionally affected we are by personal relationships with people around us, which is why most songs are about that. Sometimes people say to me, do you think there should be more political songs? Not necessarily. No, I think it's quite normal that most songs are about personal relationships, because that's what, as human beings, that's what affects us the most.
And it also, I guess, it gives songs longevity in that.
And it even applies. You hear a song one day, and you go, "That's a cheesy, shitty lyric. That's just a copy of a copy of a copy made for money." But 2 months later, you might be in a particular situation with your partner, and you think, that lyric, you go, oh, I'm really feeling that. I mean, it is all universal. As creatures, we have a very small range of emotions, and to some extent, a pretty small range of experiences, especially when it comes to love and relationships.
Brilliant. Really interesting stuff, Justin. Thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And we look forward to hearing the new album. So it comes out on Friday, the 26th.
Friday.
Week today. I think this will be going out on Monday. So Friday coming, new album, New Battle Army. Check it out, and I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot for your time, Justin, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.